Hi there, this is Cy, and this is Some Idiot Reads. Normally this is the part of the video where I will sit down and I'll do my random rambling on whatever the hell happens to be on my mind at the time, and I guess that actually qualifies right now. I think I touched on this on the last one of the last couple. I need to get good on my video game of like computational settings and all that in OBS. I'm not a video editor. Most of it is Greek to me, but I am an IT generalist in addition to, some idiot. And can usually try and brute force my way through stuff and sort things out. There's just been a pain in the butt slog, so it's kind of, toggle testing and all that until I figure out what actually works. So, well, this is about a minute into the recording and it's not overloading my GPU, so that's something. Hi, how are you guys doing? I intimated at the end of the last recording that I would be recording this immediately after, which was my intent. I actually got a couple of takes in before, with consistent failing of video. It was lagging. It was just being such a butt. But I got several takes in before it was actually starting to seem like it was going to work. And then I was stumbling over my words and I was not going to be doing appropriate justice to a read through of Coyote's work. Though I suppose maybe actually very appropriate justice considering the topic of the article for today. Still, I wanted to be on a better game when representing his work out there. I mean, I'm not actually in any official capacity associated with Coyote or his work. I'm, again, some idiot reading. But I wanted to at least give a good presentation, So, all right, we're 2 minutes in. It's still going. All right. Hopefully this doesn't suck. So, if everything goes through just fine and as planned, this video should actually be uploading shortly after Thanksgiving here over in the United States. Hopefully, you guys have had a good time of things. You've been able to relax, not get in too much in the way of arguments with family, get some good eats at the very least, and, overall, have a relaxing time of things. Or maybe you're at work, just working out, getting a little bit of that extra scratch going on. Can't fault you for that one. We're in a shared hellscape. High five. But combination of the crapshoot that this was yesterday with trying to record it, as well as the fact that this is going to be coming out after and around the holidays, I figured, you know what, screw it. I got done with a shower earlier, which was fantastic, like literally maybe an hour ago. And I'm just chilling in a bathrobe because I don't care. Not like I'm showing anything off here. No, I'm not going to show skin on YouTube. Not even if you ask politely. But I figure screw it. Let's just go in. I want to put my effort and what fucks I have to give. I want to put that into the reading for this evening. Now, I fully expect I am only going to wind up doing the one. This does say a 22-minute read, and I believe I was expecting this to come out about the same. So, that is what we are going to be going with for this evening. All right, we are 4 minutes in. I'm going to go ahead and cut my idiot rambling short. Also, as a final note, I should actually have. I've been regularly uploading Some Idiot Plays on the channel. Feel free to go check those out. Currently, I am getting the regular uploads of the Mist series going, and there will be more of that coming down the pipe. And some other things, too. Oh. Water. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Also, as a quick note, before diving into it, and actually, I'm going to put this at the beginning of the chapter break. So, have you gone out and bought a copy of American Mystic? You should. It's by Coyote, the dude that's doing the dispatches. He does some amazing writing. You should go buy his book. It's an amazing book. You're not screwing me up, are you? Okay, you're fine. Good. Keep doing fine. Not you, the video encoder. But you should go buy Coyote's book. Seriously. It's awesome. It's fantastic. It's gonzo journalism at its finest. And I hear tell a billionaire gets the shit kicked out of them. Anyway, let's do this. All right. Surf, Sand, and Coyotes. The Adventures of an Appalachian Degenerate. Part 2. Start out the article with a picture of a coyote chilling out. Just look like he's doing a little nappy nap next to what I assume is a bottle of whiskey. Probably rye whiskey. And the caption, so, that works out. I feel you, bro. The king is dead. I awoke on June 25th, 2009, to the sound of Tarantino and the others losing it over the news coming through the television. My head hurt. My mouth was as dry and parched as a dirt country road in the summer months, and I felt as if Oscar had dragged me back to the hotel behind his cab. I fought against the waking world. My pillow was soft, and the sheets, while the sort of yellow that I didn't want to dwell on for too long, were cool and comfortable. Only snippets made it through the early morning haze to nip at my heels like angry dogs, chasing me towards the waking world. So you think it was a suicide or what? Tarantino was asking. Nope, not waking up. I guess we'll never know if he really did it, Tommy remarked, either almost instantly or after some middling length of time. It was impossible to say which. Nope, still not waking up. What do you mean good? He didn't do it. That's some shit a bunch of racist motherfuckers made up to bring that man down. He was getting too popular and too successful. Just like that guy from England, the one with the glasses and long hair. Real old. FBI and shit was all up his ass. Big John was countering someone's theory with his own opinions. I realized then that further sleep was rapidly going to become impossible. Ozzy? Tarantino asked, trying to piece it out. No, he means Eric Clapton, Tommy countered. He means John Lennon, god damn it. Can't you just quietly do drugs in the morning like sane people? I groaned into my pillow. I rolled over and grabbed my cigarettes from the nightstand and began the laborious process of sitting up, the room doing its best to spin until it sent last night's drinking onto the cheap carpet. My mind felt as if it were stuck in dark, sticky mud, and I was still playing catch-up with what was going on. The fuck even happened? I asked the trio, the cobwebs still not completely cleared from my brain. Michael Jackson died, man. It's all over the news, Tommy said, and gave a quick nod towards the television. I winced against the brightness of the waking world and looked at the television. Americans, as a rule, have neither nobles nor saints. In America, those rules are filled by celebrities, fame, and money serving as proof of our divine right. Our worship of these man-made deities is as much a part of the American condition as fried food and bullets. Here we were, hundreds of miles away from our little town whose escape we had cherished, flush with money, drugs, and the endless possibilities for a good time. And yet now, an ominous shadow had befallen our trip. My companions were glued to the television, waiting for the little details to float down the news line. Shit, really? Anyone go get food yet? If I sounded like I didn't care, it was because I genuinely did not care. At all. I also don't know if y'all heard that, but there were sirens going by, which I feel is apropos. I was not a fan. I'd never been a fan. And even if I were, I had a strong stubborn streak when it came to my core belief that the rich are inherently evil, or, in the best case scenario, simply on the path of evil. I was a punk with a background in rock and roll and the gildings of angry metal. The death of the king of pop might as well have been the death of the king of Eswatini for all I was concerned. I knew all the rumors and accusations that had been leveled at Jackson, and only my desire to avoid adding to the growing conflict kept me from siding with Tommy. The rich do not play by the same rules as the poor did, and their wealth precludes them from being caught with smoking guns. My distrust and apathy on that matter was owed to Desaad's Salo, 30 Days of Sodom. With enough time and money, the wealthy would always engage in the worst and most irredeemable of behaviors. Only our need for heroes blinded us to that fact. Not yet. It's been like this all morning, Tarantino said, and made a sweeping gesture with his hands, indicating Tommy and Big John. You boys just don't understand. I can tell. All that stuff with the kids was just a setup. They drove this man to killing himself because they knew if they didn't, he'd eventually be back on top. And there was nothing they could do with him. John kept up his defense, growing more vehement with each word. He did it. The fuck do you mean there was nothing they could do with him? Innocent people don't pay out millions of dollars to keep kids quiet, Tommy shot back. Tarantino gave me a sympathetic look that told me this debate had been going on for some time. But, unlike Tarantino, I had no plans of sitting here and being caught up in it for the majority of the day, and I sensed that if the others weren't derailed from it soon, rifts would begin to form. I understood, at least I think I did, John's point. A man is innocent until proven guilty in our country, and when dealing with an iconic figure, that may well serve as inspiration for others. And America does have a steady current of racism running through it that sends thousands upon thousands of young African-American men to prison each year on any number of inflated charges. The only color I saw when I looked at Jackson was money green. White, black, green, or vermilion, money corrupts all men and frees the demons inside them. There was no explaining that to John and throwing my support behind Tommy in the little informal debate. There was no explaining that to John, and throwing my support behind Tommy in the little informal debate would have only created more division. Instead, I opted out. Breakfast would be my savior. I threw on a fresh set of wrinkled clothing, splashed water on my face, and left. I liked the boys. They were my friends and my companions on this trip. But I worried for my sanity if I remained for a moment longer. The morning after the night's revelry was muted and strangely peaceful. Most people hadn't hit the streets yet, and the day was still cool. The beaches had yet to be overrun with children screaming at the sky, and the sky, overcast that morning, was like a great gray shell that had been cracked to expose radiant bands of gold, red, fiery orange, and purple over the Atlantic. A few of the diners were just beginning to open, and I ducked into one, hoping for coffee, toast, and enough peace that my splitting head would have mercy on me. Feeling somewhat more like a living person and less like a Stretch Armstrong that had been left to dry rot in the sun, I headed back to the room. John and Tommy had finally ceased their debate and found common ground on the matter of returning to that shifty, nameless strip club we'd visited the night before. My own funds were limited, but Tommy and John still had more than enough cash left to play around with, and the two of them saw no better use for that money than to cram down the G-strings of what I am sure were all aspiring medical students. There were weirder ways to make peace than over strippers and overpriced drinks, but I could not think of a single one at that moment. Again? Really? You didn't get enough of that place? I threw the question at them. Breakfast had helped my mood a little, but my head still felt as if I'd been kicked by an ornery mule. It's part of my plan. Tommy grinned and beamed with confidence. Plan? What plan? I asked, stealing a glance at the television to see if anything new had replaced the death of the King of Pop. It didn't. Yeah, I got a plan. I dropped $1,000 in that place last night, and I'm going to do it again tonight. That way, the strippers think that I have money. Then I'm going to invite one back here, Tommy said with such conviction that I could not doubt that he, at the very least, believed every word. That's not a plan. That's a sign of brain damage, I told him bluntly. Yeah, man, you gotta have game, Tommy. Money helps, but game is where it's at. John gave his advice on the matter, intentionally avoiding the news. I can only assume this was part of an informal treaty between the two, for there was no mention of the earlier argument, and no broaching the subject from either of them. I shook my head. I had no desire to see how Tommy's plan would play out. I was fairly certain if I suffered another night at that place, I would go mad and burn the entire city to the ground. The safer option was to stay behind, as Tarantino had the night before. Count me out. You two can go there and lose all your money. Have a great time. I'll be dipped in butter and thrown in the fryer before I go back to that place. You fucking lunatics. Tarantino, you were the only one who had the right idea. I bet you didn't spend a dime last night, did you? I bet you stayed right here the whole goddamn time. I gave my commentary as I rustled up a red plastic cup and made a rum and coke that was mostly just rum with a faint soda coloring. Tarantino, sitting on the bed, pushed his glasses up his nose and spread his arms out to the side as if he meant to embrace the world. Mine is the way, he intoned like a faux spiritual leader. Yours is the way to die alone, beating off to the Travel Channel and owning chihuahuas. I'm going to find some music in a bar, I quipped. The rest of the day proved uneventful. The heat was murderous, and none of us felt inclined to visit the beach, teeming with kids and families fresh out of the metaphorical station wagon. The pool was out of the question. It looked like Slimer had opened his wrist and gone for a swim. Mostly we drank, smoked, and then ate, steadily working our way through the supplies we had brought. I'd rarely been so drunk for so many consecutive days of my life, and at least some small part of me should have been worried about a downward spiral into the depths of alcoholism. But at the time, the drinking simply felt second nature. I couldn't have survived the garish affront to nature's beauty that was the tacky tourist town while sober. Sometimes sanity must be made to bend so that it does not break. Tommy and John eventually called the same damn cabbie, Oscar, that we'd used the night before. They took a certain pleasure in this fact, as if he were their lucky charm. We'd been drinking and smoking marijuana most of the day, and the coming evening had a phantasmagorical energy. The high-speed, alcohol-fueled drive toward excess had been draped in the shadows of loss. America had lost one of the key figures of its modern cultural identity, someone whose fame had once dwarfed even the Beatles, and you could taste it in the air. The tourism-driven stretch of beachfront was all about forgetting the troubles and heavy thoughts you left behind back in the real world, and yet now it was infused with sad celebration that reminded me of an Irish wake. I wished John and Tommy all the best, and they left me alone with Tarantino in the room. We shared a joint, and I did my best to make myself look presentable, or at least like I wasn't a street busker. While I was getting ready, I spied Tarantino sitting on the bed, flipping aimlessly through the channels on the television. You know, you can come with me. Fuck it, I'll buy the drinks. What do you say? I hated the idea of Tarantino spending the whole vacation in the hotel by himself each time the others and I ventured out. Tarantino peered at me over the frames of his thick-rimmed Buddy Holly-style glasses and smirked. I don't know about you, dude, but me? I don't get a lot of peace and quiet at home. Sitting here, all the smoke I want, with no one to complain or ride my ass, that's just about as good as it gets. I don't need the hassle of going out, you know? I just wouldn't have fun with it, Tarantino explained, and there was nothing I could do then. When a man sets his sight on comfort rather than adventure, he is rarely dissuaded from that course. I left out so drunk that I had to occasionally stop and lean against the face of hotels or streetlights to maintain my balance. The evening was muggy, and the heat seeped into my already booze-soaked skin, penetrated right down to the core of me, and left my guts in a greasy hammock. The pot had helped considerably, though, and I treated those little breaks as excuses for cigarettes and people-watching. The streets were full of faces, groups of young men who were probably there with the same motives as our little cadre, older couples walking arm in arm, giggling teenage girls, the sultry bikini-clad women. They all passed me in my quest to find something that I didn't even really know what I was looking for. I had no criteria for the place that would be my watering hole for the evening. I just trusted myself to know it when I saw it. Side note, honestly, it's been a hot minute since I actually read the first one of these, but I'm reminded again of my childhood and how I was visualizing. I grew up on the Gulf Coast, and the big thing that was always around when I was a kid was Panama City. A spring break all the time. And between the two of these, what I'm picturing is let's call it the trashy version of Panama City's college spring break. And that's what I'm picturing for this. And I'm just visualizing Coyote just staggering his way through some kind of combination of like Hunter S. Thompson, of Johnny Depp as Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing. Um, Not even a combination. It's been a long day, but that's what I'm picturing, and it's there's an entire feel to this that I have seen and like I've experienced it, I've observed it in person. But honestly, I was way more like with Tarantino there. Not so much like wanting to avoid adventure or anything. I absolutely would be fine going out and getting adventure and doing that. But like, I'm usually way more low key. At least I am anymore. And but I can visualize and sort of empathize with what's going on there. And honestly, had I been in my 20s and hanging out on this one, I probably would have been like, screw it, let's just go out too. I would have gone out as well. Screw it. Ugh, I'm rambling for the sake of rambling. Let's go. Okay. This was the second time on the trip that I found myself wandering the streets of what might as well be the number one place for the conception of future mobile homeowners. Okay, I feel way less bad about saying a trashy version of spring break. I felt alone and anxious, and more than a little out of sorts. Part of me wished that the boys had stuck around and hit the town with me, but I knew that I couldn't have tagged along with them for a second night in a row. I'd had my fill of inauthenticity, and I don't think I'd encountered a single genuine thing other than the ocean since I'd arrived. Most of the clubs were playing dance music or hip-hop. A few had hung up banners that promised the celebration of the musical life of Michael Jackson. These places were alive and jumping with activity, which served to keep me away far more successfully than any glowering banter or overpriced drink selection. A quick rule of thumb to all you future degenerates out there. You can gauge the authenticity, the realness of a bar, by the crowd. Too small, and the place is probably a shithole. Too big, and the place is living on the edge of trendy. And the edge of trendy has no more substance than spun sugar. I don't know for how long I walked, how many times I stopped, how many cigarettes I smoked as I waited for the world to stop spinning. The hotel was far behind me now, and thudding deep bass lines of the dance clubs could no longer batter me. In the night air, there were notes of a guitar, something bluesy and shot through with dirty bits of southern rock. It wasn't my usual taste, but it was close enough, in the ballpark at least, and I followed those notes like a man on the hunt for some fearsome beast of the wood. What I found was this small bar called Truckers, where a street magician was performing out in front of a small crowd. Card tricks and the boardwalk for tips had its own strange beauty to it, its own weird perfection of place. I got myself a table and listened to the band whose name escapes me all these years later. They weren't good, but they weren't bad either, and they dutifully were working their way through covers of Lynyrd Skynyrd, Molly Hatchet, and Blackfoot's greatest hits. Tired waitress made her way over, her hair frizzled and light brown. She was curvy and cute, but it was clear the night was already wearing on her. Waitress work is hell that most men can never conceive. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. What'll it be? The accent wasn't Carolina at all, but somewhere from deep Georgia. Beer? Bud Light, I guess. Fuck it, make it a picture, I told her. If one was going to be a bear, they might as well be a grizzly. So it came to pass that I sat drinking cheap, awful beer by the goddamn pitcher, listening to a band do covers of old southern rock songs, all by myself like some sort of alcoholic lunatic. I made no attempts at conversation. I made no efforts at striking up friendships or seeking out a romantic partner. I drank and listened to music and drank some more. I was in a death battle with the heat, and my only weapon was cold beer, and I intended to wield that weapon to maximum effect. One after another, again and again. Okay, off to the side on this one. I have my own interpretation of how I feel that particular paragraph, personally. I do not know if that's where this is at, in terms of the greater context of the work, and I'm interested in, continuing and seeing where that is, but for me, that is I don't want to call it a sad place. It's a quiet place. It's one that's very contemplative where it's like it's not even a matter of the music or the beer in and of itself. It's not the environment. It's kind of a dissolution of self, I think is the best way for me to describe that. Of just becoming, washing away as much of yourself as you can so that you are indistinguishable from what is around you. Not even sure really how much sense that makes, but I'm going to stick with it. Eventually, I had my fill, and the bar was beginning to close down anyway. The band had been replaced by the canned music over the house speakers, and my tolerance for the surroundings waned. I slipped away and out into the night, staggering and weaving my way out the door. I was suddenly convinced that if I tried to walk down the sidewalk and find the hotel, that I would be apprehended by the police. They'd take one look at me and see that I was a feckless degenerate who was out of his mind on grass and booze. This was no good. I liked Tommy and John and Tarantino all well enough, but did I trust them to stick around and bail me out of jail? Absolutely not. They'd leave me here. I was sure of it. So naturally, I opted to instead shoot down to the beach and walk the length of the shoreline back to the hotel. The night was clear and beautiful. All the stars spread out over the sea and the moonlight playing on the water. I can remember that even through the haze of the alcohol, the shimmering silver of the moon on the water. The smattering of bars that were built with their dance floors outside and exposed to the beach were almost all in the midst of celebrating Michael Jackson's life. Some legs of my journey, staggering and falling at times in the sand, were cut through with Billie Jean, and others laden with freedom. I passed a group of young Marines who were all sitting alone in a loose ring. 2 of their number were holding flags, one the American flag, and the other the flag of the Marine Corps, and they were all drinking cans of beer fished from a large red cooler, half buried in the sand by their feet. I went to throw up a hand to wave at them, stumbled, and fell down in the sand. One of them must have felt sorry for me, because I felt strong arms pull me up out of the sand, and found myself looking at the youthful face of a Hispanic fellow, roughly my age, but who was considerably more well put together. I was built with the body of a heavy reader, and this guy was a spark plug of muscle and sinew. He hauled me out of the sand like I weighed nothing, and got me back on my feet. "You okay, man? You want to sit down over here with us for a bit? Have you a beer and get your head straight?" The young Marine asked, with more concern than I probably deserved. "Yeah, I just partied a little bit too much. Just a little bit." "The fuck is the deal with the flags?" I got the question out as they handed me a fresh beer from the cooler they had buried in the sand at their feet. Apparently the Marine cure for excessive drinking was to continue drinking till you hit sober on the other side. Having grown up around Marines and known several Marines in my life, speaking as Psy, that is my experience with Marines as well. Comment if you have had the same experience, or if you are a Marine that can confirm. It's tradition, man. We're shipping out tomorrow. So, tonight, we sit here and drink till the sun rises, and make sure the flags don't fall," he said with a grin, and this provoked a little round of laughter from his fellows. I cracked open the beer and added it to my list of mistakes for the night. I do not know for how long I sat there in their company, listening to them tell stories, bust balls, and bullshit. I never got any of their names either, and the memory of the camaraderie stands out far stronger than any physical detail about the men. Eventually, I got myself together enough to find my feet, thanked them for the beer, and began the laborious process of trekking down the beach. I, of course, stumbled across more bars, now on the verge of closing, still mourning the loss of the king of pop, but increasingly I also encountered those where people weren't celebrating his life, but also his death. There was a disconnect that was so vividly clear, a divisiveness that seemed almost a reflection of the debate my friends had been drawn into earlier. There were places where the crowd wept, there were places where the patrons cheered, and walking on the outskirts, staying just out of range of notice like a coyote skirting a farm's fence, I found myself marveling at this distinction. I was fascinated by this polarization in the same way that some are fascinated by the touching down of deadly tornadoes. When I finally returned to the room, my shoes were full of sand, my clothing was soaked from the tumble at the lip of the ocean, and I reeked of beer, liquor, and sweat. Tommy and John had returned from their trip to the strip club and were already alternating between the pills and the last of the Hennessy. The whole hotel room was draped in a thick haze of marijuana smoke that was as stifling in its density as any fog. "Told you guys he wasn't lost," Tarantino piped up as I came through the door. "Nope, just fucked up," I muttered and rubbed my face with my hands. "You're doing better than us. We struck out again, and Tommy blew most of his money," John rumbled as he poured himself another drink. It was clear that he and Tommy had returned far earlier than I had, and had taken to drinking heavily. Both of them were already pushing past drunk and into sloppy. So was I, for that matter. "Of course, you assholes. They're strippers. That's what they do. You striking out is literally how they make their fucking money. Jesus Christ, someone roll a joint before Tommy sells it all for some magic goddamn beans." I was drunk and surly, and the little voice that usually served to keep me from going too far in my excesses was conspicuous by its absence. I remember that final joint. I remember it going around. I remember the laughter and the shots we took at each other in good fun. I do not remember any further drinking on my part, but I know that I did because we finished off the last of our alcohol supply that night. At some point, I went to bed before Tommy or the others, the room spinning like an amusement park carousel, finally proving to be too much for me. Okay. That was my phone going off. We're going to just mute that. Okay. I hadn't been asleep for more than an hour, not even long enough for the booze to work its way out of my system, when Tommy woke me up. "Coyote. Hey, Coyote. Man, we got a problem," Tommy said, in between giving my shoulder a nudge with his hand. "What? Problem? What goddamn problem?" All I wanted was sleep or death, and here Tommy was, trying to pull me back into the land of the living. I did not intend to go quietly into wakefulness. "It's John, man. John's fucked up. He tried to take a shower and passed out in the tub, and I can't get him out." Tommy's eyes were as wide as saucers as he spoke, and his face had gone as pale as a sheet of paper. I rolled out of bed and followed Tommy to the bathroom, opened the door, and there John was, passed out in the tub. All 300 plus pounds of him naked as the day he was born. The tub was exceptionally narrow, and not all of John had fit inside. One big leg hung over the edge, and he reminded me of a turtle that had been placed on its shell. He was out cold, snoring, and I honestly tried several times to wake him by yelling his name and even giving him a shake or two. None of this worked. "Fuck, we can't leave him in here. How are we going to get him out? Think we can pull him?" Tommy questioned from the door. "Anything's worth a try, I guess. You get one arm, I'll get the other. We'll see if we can't just pull him out." I floated the idea because it was the best I could come up with while still drunk and running on 1 hour's worth of sleep, but I had no faith in it working. We pulled, and we pulled to no avail. We even broke down and got Tarantino to try and help, but it was no good. John was stuck in that bathtub, wedged in there by his dead weight and gravity. For those of you wondering how you get a 300-pound man out of a bathtub when he's completely unconscious, the answer is, surprisingly enough, you don't. You do not get him out of that bathtub. In fact, you end up just covering him up in blankets and saying a prayer that he does not die in the middle of the night. I went back to bed as Tarantino and Tommy began to discuss the possibilities of creating a fulcrum and using it to wedge John out of the tub. And what follows next is a Michael Jackson memorial of some sort. The Broke Unwanted Blues. The next morning, we were awoken by a furious pounding at the hotel room door. John was still wedged in the bathtub and had not stirred John was still wedged in the bathtub and had not stirred, and the room itself looked as if it played host to all manner of depravity. Bottles, rolling papers, weed crumbs, pill residue, and tutors, all of it was just scattered everywhere when Tommy answered the door. It was a hotel manager. Apparently our neighboring guest had finally grown tired of the never-ending cavalcade of pot smoke, drunken ranting, and our general disregard for the rules. We were asked to leave, and there was no hope of a refund. Tommy had apparently argued the point with the manager, but by the time I'd rolled out of bed to see what was fully going on, the matter was settled. We had noon to vacate the premises, or the police would be called. Great. John emerged from the bathroom, fully clothed, and completely without a trace of the fact that he had been wedged in a goddamn bathtub, as if he had been summoned, fully formed, and rejuvenated by the dispute at the door between Tommy and the hotel's manager. We all sat stunned and trying to figure out a plan, a way to reverse our fortunes. Well, why don't we just find another hotel? There's bound to be some place where we can get a deal. The question I posed seemed reasonable enough. Tommy was always flush, and if the party got stopped here, just moving it seemed like the only play we had left. Tommy looked at us sheepishly and said nothing, while John made a point to choose that moment to set about brushing his teeth. What? I knew something was up. Remember when I said I spent most of my money at the strip club? I really meant that. We've got maybe $30, 2 joints, and a pack of Salem Lights between John and me. What about you and Tarantino? There was a little glimmer of optimism in Tommy's eyes when he asked. Me? I spent all my fucking money on beer, goddammit. I thought you had this covered, I said, shaking my head in disgust. Don't look at me. I was broke to begin with, Tarantino added. The realization that we were going to have to call the trip off early was a stiff one. No one likes to venture out into the world only to be sent back with their tail tucked between their legs. We'd ventured out into the wild blue yonder and had ourselves a rip-roaring time fueled by booze, drugs, and rock and roll, and the pursuit of attractive companionship, only to run aground due to poor planning. The sting of this failure was mitigated somewhat, though, by the sheer panic of how we'd get home on $30, or much less, how we would eat or drink along the way. We were all hungover, dehydrated, and felt like we'd been run over by a pack of elephants. Breakfast would have been divine, but it simply wasn't in the cards. We ended up slinking away with a little more than an hour left before the deadline the manager had given us to vacate the premises was up. The truck had maybe half a tank of gas in it, and we prayed to all that we knew that our remaining funds would be enough to get us home. The ride back felt much longer and more dreadful than the ride there. I'd endured the close, cramped quarters well enough on the way down to South Carolina, but heading back into Kentucky, it was maddening. The radio was still spewing out details about Jackson's death as we traveled across various state lines, and our only source of nourishment, provided to us by our $30 get-the-fuck-home budget, was a Snickers bar that we divided into 4 small, unsatisfying pieces. It was the best damn Snickers bar I'd ever had. Shortly after we returned home, we all went our separate ways, and we never really reconnected again. Some of that was just we grew older and put away our excess for the sake of excess shenanigans. But the other part was just the sort of luck or fate that small-town life spits at you from time to time. Tarantino ended up becoming the head manager of a mobile phone supply store in town, and even managed to have 2 adorable kids. Big John would eventually end up sucked into the mining life that awaits so many young people here in Kentucky, no matter how bitterly some would complain about the decline of coal jobs. I haven't spoken to him in years, and the last time I did, he'd gone fully over to the conservative side of things. Tommy would eventually end up arrested in a rat-shit hotel for possession of morphine and a solid pound of fine grass. He was given house arrest and court-ordered to rehab. From time to time, I still see him around the neighborhood, his Bob Marley fixation and all his old dealer tricks, replaced now by a commendable fixation with finding the perfect aluminum siding for his house and the cultivation of a fine lawn. The 4 of us would never again venture out like that together. The memories of our trip are shrouded in booze, drugs, and shameless revelry. We chased freedom and found it, but we were unable to hold it for long. And maybe that's what it's all about in the end. Maybe that's the appeal of fabulously trashy little places like Myrtle Beach. You can't win or really find what you're looking for there. But you can have the fight. You can give it your all and forget that you're doomed to lose when the money runs out and you have to return home. A sweet spot between filth and fantastic, or picking up a stripper, or simply forgetting where you came from, or who you are seems as impossible as lying drunk for 3 days and basking in the sun. We'd lived through the death of a king, be he revered or reviled, and for one sliver of time, we'd lived outside of any rules, conditions, or expectations that otherwise weighed us down. In the end, none of us ever really escaped our small town, but we were left with the youthful drunken memories, and sometimes, in the heart of Appalachia, those slivers of memory are all that you need. And that was Surf, Sand, and Coyotes, The Adventures of an Appalachian Degenerate, Part 2. One thing I want to comment on after finishing this is I really love the way that it's written. It's clearly it's speaking from memory. So, there's going to be a flow to it that feels real. Go figure. It's real events, or at least based on it. Maybe slightly altered, either for the sake of the tale and tale spinning, or the drugs. That's also a possibility. Or both. But there's something really cinematic to the feel of it. Like, I don't want to compare it to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That's its own separate thing. But maybe like the independent film festival version of that, if that makes sense. I hope that's not taken in any kind of negative way. But I could see a small, short indie film be made based off of this article. Well, these 2 articles, this entire story. I could see a really fascinating, there's not necessarily a deeper meaning to it. It's just a yarn. It's just a film. It's just a thing that processes. I really wish that I had the budget to sit down and do that sort of thing, because I absolutely would try and commission for that. I think it could work really well. You know what? No, I think it's somewhere. That was what it was. Somewhere between at the intersection of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Stand By Me, and an independent film festival. That I think, where those 3 things intersect, this is right around there. If this, as I'm visualizing this as a film. But that was an enjoyable read. Both of these were fascinating to run through and reminded me of my own. In a different way. I didn't have that same kind of degeneracy going on, but reminded me of my own early 20s and just roaming around all over the frickin' place. And while, strictly speaking, I could probably do one more, in all honesty, I kind of want to leave it on this note. Have this one wrapped up. There are more of these that I will be doing for the dispatches. I'm not going to stop that. They seem like they performed well. So if you've enjoyed them, please like and subscribe. Make sure that you go over to Coyote's Medium page. I will have the link and the information for that in the description. Go over there. Get the dude a follow. Toss him a tip. Support him. Give some engagement. Give a clap. Like this. You see? You go right over here. Right there where it is. Give it a clap. Just like that. A little clappy clappy. Do it. Show support, show engagement. He's a fantastic writer, and I want to see more love sent his direction. He deserves it, especially after all the booze. But yeah, no, there will be more of these coming. Again, go out, get yourselves a copy of American Mystic. I will continue to voice my encouragement that you purchase a copy for yourself, for your friends, for your family, for your enemies. Just go nuts with it. Buy a copy and leave it at your local library. Let someone find it and then go, oh my God, wait, is this a library book? And maybe they find something that they enjoy. Carry it on into the future. Be a renegade. I'm rambling at this point. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to call it here. Leave it on the short side. Again, hopefully you all had a good holiday time of things. And if you happen to be catching this well after the holidays, then, hopefully you've had a good week, a good day, that you're not in too bad of a place. And if you are, hopefully the dulcet tones of my reading has brought some sort of balm to you. I also have some text messages I need to reply to. So, on that note, you all take care. I absolutely adore every single one of you. And I will catch you on the next one. Peace.